Good evening. I'd like to call the council meeting of December 12th to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. Reel?
Here.
Mrs. Bednar? Here. Mr. Costello?
Here.
Mr. D'Antonio?
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Here.
Mr. Provani?
Here.
Mr. Razor?
Present. Would you all please rise and declare the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the council meeting. Razor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Heavenly Father, you are the Alpha and the Omega. You are the creator of the universe. We thank you tonight for the injuries and the illnesses that you stopped before we even knew about them. We thank you for the providence that you've given us that we don't deserve. But we thank you most for the biggest gift, which was your Son, who we celebrate coming to earth on Christmas. Jesus taught us to love one another and to honor God above all. So in this Christmas season, we ask that you give us the grace to love our neighbors, strangers, and even our enemies. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have before you the minutes of the council meeting of November 21st. What is your pleasure? Would you approve? Second. Moving second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. The minutes have been approved. You also have the minutes from the public hearing on November the 18th. What is your pleasure? Second. Moving second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. Those minutes stand approved. Reading communications. Ms. Enna.
I have a letter support for Ron Marhopper Stow's rezoning proposal. There are two primary reasons why I strongly support Ron Marhopper's request for a zoning change next to his dealership. First, Stow and Stow schools need this $5 million investment. As the city matures, it will become increasingly more difficult to find opportunities for such significant new investment. Without new investment, tax revenues for the city and schools will begin to dry up. Second is my concern that without approval, there is a risk the dealership can relocate outside of Stow. Mr. Marhopper has never threatened to move, and he has stated that he has no intention of moving. He has been honest and upright with the city of Stow, and he has too much class to make such threats. He would prefer to have the issue approved on its merits without threats. However, things change over time. In the long run, without approval, relocation may be necessary for survival. Marhopper has indicated that the current facility is outmoded and cannot handle the dealership's customer and employee needs. The facility will not allow the growth Marhopper needs to compete. In his words, the facility is, quote, stuck in the 60s, unquote, and cannot be upgraded or expanded. From my own experience, which includes nearly 30 years of business management, if our company faced these obstacles, we would have no choice but to look to relocate. At some point, Marhopper must have a facility to meet the needs. Whether it be at the intersection of Kent and Darrow Roads or someplace else, no one knows at this time. I urge members of City Council to keep in mind the potential for relocation as they vote on this issue. They should vote for what is best for the city as a whole and what is best for most Stow voters. In the spirit of transparency, I am a member of the city's Planning Commission and chairman of Stow's Park and Recreation Department Advisory Board. I do not write in either of those two capacities, nor do I intend to speak for Marhopper. My comments represent my opinion strictly as a private citizen, Bernie Scheidler. I have another letter from Carol Timoshenko. Hello. Due to my daughter's first fifth grade band concert this evening at 7 p.m., I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. I want to share a quick email I received from my friend's grandfather who lives in Stow. He forwarded to me Planning Commission member Bertie Scheidler's December 11th letter to the editor of the Akron Beacon Journal supporting the Marhopper rezoning. His comments regarding Mr. Scheidler's letter are brief yet powerful, and when I read it, I realize how valid this wise elderly man's humble opinion is. His comments follow below and are in bold. Carol, by the socialist communist thinking, protecting private property rights is bogus. He advocates sacrificing individual rights to promote the good of the community. Thorndale residents have sacrificed much time with their families, their lives, as well as money over the past 2 years in an effort to save their neighborhood, their home's values, and quality of life. During this time, the residents came to realize that their efforts are not only to protect their neighborhood, but to protect all of our city's neighborhoods. If the city chooses not to protect their neighborhood, whose neighborhood could be in jeopardy in the future? They have become the voice for all Stow homeowners in regards to individual property rights in our city. When I read my friend's grandfather's words, quote, "By this socialist communist thinking, protective private property rights is bogus. He advocates sacrificing individual rights to promote the good of the community," unquote. It frightened me because he is correct. And he is speaking of one of our City Planning Commission members' public views. Thank you for your time. And I have one more letter. My name is Rachel Kravitz, formerly Rachel Ryland. I am writing in support of my parents and the residents of Thorndale Avenue. Understanding that I do not currently live in Stow, I am writing to support the neighborhood that fostered my growth and development. A backyard that I played in frequently with the neighbors that is on the brink of being demolished, and the residents that have worked hard and by the rules to become homeowners and make a life for themselves. I attended the Stow City Schools from 1st to 12th grade, graduating in 2002. My parents chose to purchase a home in Stow, Ohio, over many other choices because of what the city had to offer. This rezoning stands to change just that. I was in town from Florida in October for the council meeting and sat in on the pre-meeting between the residents and Mr. Marhofer. I was hopeful, leaving the set of meetings on October 24th, that Mr. Marhofer and the residents were going to be able to become to an agreement. However, after hearing about subsequent meetings, it seems that no compromise is going to be reached. I am asking you to vote no on the rezoning of the 3 properties on Thorndale Avenue. I understand that Mr. Marhofer is a well-respected businessman in the community. However, he has failed to show the same level of respect for the community itself and should therefore be denied his petition. This neighborhood supported him when his own corporation did not. Mr. Marhofer has put on a show of flexibility in an attempt to cast the neighborhood in a poor light. However, he is the one unwilling to compromise. Mr. Marhofer has acknowledged both that there is a difference between what he wants and what he needs in this plan, and that he will not leave Stow if he is denied his request. Why then should the city be compelled to vote yes for a proposal that is such a poor and unnecessary plan? Over the years, Mr. Marhofer has failed to upkeep his business. He has let his parking lot and buildings fall into disarray, even admitting himself that they are an eyesore. He frequently lets the smallest of upkeep, landscaping, fall to the wayside. During middle school and high school, there were many days I had to walk to the bus stop on the street instead of the sidewalk because his trees were not trimmed or his sidewalks were not shoveled. Despite this, he claims that expanding the building anew is the answer. While that makes sense in the short term, consider the additional eyesore that the property will be 10 years down the line when he has yet again let this property go, this time with additional acreage. Also consider the beautiful long-standing neighborhood that will be demolished in the process. Given the lack of willingness of Mr. Marhofer's side to work with the neighborhood, the negative impact of the plan on the environment and aesthetics of the neighborhood, the disruption the proposed layout would have on Indian Trail Elementary School, and finally the fact that this type of commercial growth is against the strategic plan for the city, it would stand to reason that the only sensible vote would be no rezoning. Voting no would be making a decision in line with the vision of the city, keeping a well-established neighborhood intact. Voting no would set a precedent that the city is not for sale and support hardworking citizens of the city that have supported both the city and Ron Marhofer for years. This plan is wrong for the neighborhood and its residents and is therefore wrong for the city. Please vote no at tonight's meeting. Thank you for all the work that you do. Rachel Ryland Kravitz. That's it.
That's it. Now comes the time in the meeting where we ask for comments from the audience. Should you wish to make any comments, please raise your hand and be recognized by the President of the Council. You'll be asked to provide your name and address for the benefit of our clerk because your comments will become part of the permanent records for this council meeting. You will be allotted 3 minutes to make your comments. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council at this time? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All the way back.
Hello again. My name is Mark Riley, and my address is 1961 Thorndale Avenue. The vote tonight brings to close months of discussion and deliberation on the topic of rezoning the Thorndale neighborhood. Will this vote ensure the continuation of our neighborhood as we know it, or will the vote cause a decline in a viable, family-centered neighborhood? In addressing council regarding rezoning of the Thorndale properties, I have consistently pointed out that this issue is larger than my family and my property in 1961 Thorndale, and our fight is against this has been about the neighborhood as a collective group. Excuse me. We have a great deal to lose in this matter, and while Mr. Marhofer as an individual has every right to request his desired zoning change, council has a responsibility to decide what is best for the collective good of the Thorndale families. Said another way, the destruction of the neighborhood has to be weighed against the individual business owner's interest and agenda. Mr. Michael Kosmak has pointed out in detailed drawings that Mr. Marhofer can drastically improve the appearance of his dealership in the present location without taking a single property from the Thorndale neighborhood. This dealership can continue to be successful at its present location. Additional parking could be obtained remotely at a remote location in other areas in Stow, more appropriate areas in Stow. Many highly successful dealerships remotely park inventory. Mr. Marhofer is a savvy businessman. He is smart enough to resolve these storage problems. A move such as this would also go a long way in demonstrating his love for the city of Stow and respect for the residential property owners who have coexisted with his dealership for many years. This zoning change and request that it represents is wrong. It is contrary to Stow's comprehensive plan and essentially eviscerates the zoning codes in our city, putting all residents and property owners at risk of encroachment by business owners, expansion into residential areas. So City Council, even this year, made a positive resident-centered decision to prevent the intrusion of an additional service of business into a neighborhood where it clearly does not belong. Mr. Marhofer has publicly stated he will not leave Stow if he does not obtain these properties, which means he can certainly modernize and improve the appearance of his dealership, something we have all supported from the beginning. Many of us signed a petition to maintain the dealership years ago when General Motors closed it. We supported him in his hour of need. We're now asking you to support us in our hour of need, as these zoning changes will facilitate invasive modifications to our neighborhood. A no vote on this zoning change will not mean the end of Mr. Marhofer's success, but it will mean a neighborhood survival. A yes vote will result in the end of our neighborhood as we know it. Mr. Marhofer can survive without taking our neighborhood, but the reverse is not true. And therein lies the principle before you. Will the majority of the Stow City Council vote and demonstrate support for the residents and constituents of this community, or will the majority vote and make an end to our neighborhood? I asked you several weeks ago to consider and remember the courage demonstrated by the residents of Thorndale, and I ask you again to remember that and encourage you to emulate that courage and do the right thing and vote against the zoning change and the proposal for expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Abby Whaley. I live at 1975 Thorndale Avenue. We have heard many character references in favor of Mr. Marhofer. No one doubts that he is a quality human being. I can also tell you that the Hollywood allotment neighborhood is full of amazing people who are outstanding members of the community. But this is not a character trial, and therefore it is not relevant. What I would ask is that you focus on the large burden that this rezoning will have on the community. On a large scale, there are the many unknowns concerning the issues of flood zones and traffic patterns, not to mention the precedent that this will set for future business expansions. On a more intimate scale, the rezoning of these properties would be a blatant show of putting the desires of a business ahead of the rights of residents. I don't personally blame Mr. Marhofer for desiring the rezoning and demolishing of these three properties. It was the cheapest and easiest way for him to accomplish his goals. He doesn't live in Stow, so why would he care as long as it makes sense for his business? Mr. Marhofer was asked to present a Plan B. However, it appears he really isn't interested in any other options as long as council entertains this request. The Stow Century has quoted him as stating that he has no interest in leaving Stow if the rezoning does not take place. So, I ask that you vote no on this rezoning request and force Mr. Marhofer to come up with another plan, or work creatively with what he already has. He has proven to be an excellent and successful businessman, and I have no doubt that he will rise to the challenge. In closing, I want to remind you that although the plan before you represents the cheapest and most convenient option for Mr. Marhofer, it is most definitely not cheap or convenient for us, the Hollywood allotment, a beautiful, well-kept neighborhood full of hardworking, outstanding members of this community. Please vote no on the rezoning of these properties, and maybe we will finally see what Mr. Marhofer has for a Plan B. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Terry May, 3425, excuse me, Margaret Avenue. I am completely against this rezoning request, as you all know. I am completely against any last-minute compromise that may be proposed. We tried for months to work a compromise, and were told repeatedly that it would not work for Mr. Marhofer, by Mr. Marhofer and his lawyer. The time is long past for a compromise to work for me. On November 24th, 2013, Mr. Marhofer stated to the Stow Century that he was not leaving, had never threatened to leave. I am disappointed, though not surprised, by Mr. Marhofer's lack of clarity from the inception of this request. I think it was beneficial to Mr. Marhofer's agenda to allow the threat of his leaving to circulate. If he was not granted approval, he has never presented the Plan B that has been requested over and over again. Could that be because if he showed you his Plan B, that would end the speculation and the momentum garnered by the continued threat of his moving? Now we know that the dealership is not leaving Stow and that this threat is no longer a valid basis for the granting of this request. We have been shown in meetings by Mr. Mike Kasmich that there are options available to facilitate these improvements without devastating my neighborhood. We have spoken about the unknown environmental consequences of the destruction of so much foliage and the paving of that acreage. We have spoken about the increased traffic in our neighborhood that will result from the closing of Yukon, which in itself is completely against the comprehensive plan. We have spoken about the safety of the children at Indian Trail Elementary School. These children will be in increased danger by the traffic cutting off the corner of an increasingly busy intersection. There have been no plans announced for how the danger can be alleviated. I asked you before, who do we as residents turn to for protection of our property rights in the city of Stow? Who do we turn to? My belief is that responsibility lies with all of you. Your job is to have the backs of the residents of the city, the people who elected you. Over the months, the realization came to that this was not just about Thorndale Avenue. It is about protecting personal property rights in all neighborhoods in the city of Stow. For if you rezone for the benefit of one business, you are setting a destructive precedent that can and will eventually affect all neighborhoods. For all these reasons, and a multitude of others addressed over the past months, there is no basis for approving this rezoning. I ask you all, apply the golden rule. If you would not want to live next door to the landscape of a commercial dealership that has destroyed the natural barrier of the majestic, decades-old trees and foliage that would protect you from a major intersection, then do not impose that devastation on my neighborhood, the Hollywood allotment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Patty Springer at 2686 North Market. I want to talk about Ron Marhofer in 1991. I was among a group of housewives who wanted to build a playground because we thought the playgrounds here in the city of Stow were inadequate and unsafe. And we had a price tag of $80,000 and no idea how to raise that money. And I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I got a list of every single business in this community, and I sent letters and made phone calls. Nothing. The one business in this community that made a significant contribution to Stow Kids Playgrounds around my house. He gave me a phone call and he said, I've got this amount of money, and I was speechless. He said, are you really excited about this? I said, absolutely, I'm not even sure. I know what to say, I'm sure if you remember that. And so, I'm convinced Ron Marhofer has a big heart. And I know that he's made contributions to this community well beyond the money he paid for Skip. And so I bought cars from him. I'm sure that many members of our committee, many people in the community, bought cars from him. It was a good business decision. But I honestly think that these decisions about Thorndale are not good decisions. I think they're bad business decisions. And I know that you have a big heart. And I'm hoping that somehow the city council can say no to this rezoning and can figure out a way to continue to give back to the community. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Sarah Moody, I live at 2854 Progress Park Drive. Just wanted to thank everyone for the months and months of listening to the residents come up before you and explain our side and plead our case. It's meant a tremendous amount to my family and everyone in our neighborhood that we can come to a place where our voices are heard. I also want to thank everyone in the Hollywood allotment for everything they've done over the last year. One thing this process has proven is that we have a tremendous group of people on our street. I grew up on Margaret Avenue, which is just adjacent to Thorndale, so I played on Thorndale. I lived right next door to Indian Trail. And this community was the main reason I asked my husband to move home after he retired from the Army. I pled my case to him. He lived nowhere near here. He was out in Kansas, and I said, you have to come to this town. You have to live in Stow. And I'm a little disappointed at the attention that we're giving to the businesses and the lack of attention to the residents. I'm not saying that Mr. Marhofer, no one is saying that he doesn't have the right to come before you and expand his business. We're all very happy to see him do that, and we encourage that. We're just looking for a compromise, and we've been looking for a compromise for the last year and a half. And I don't think that this proposal as it stands currently is what our city stands for, and it's certainly not why I moved my entire family here. And I must admit, the last time I stood in these chambers, I was in high school, it was 1992, and we just won the state volleyball championship. So when I came before you this time, I had a vested interest. I was a little bit older. I won't tell you how much. But I would like to say that I think we have a tremendous community here, very family-oriented. And this group of people are the type of residents that you want to stay here. So if anything, I ask tonight that you weigh that you weigh the integrity of these people that come out night after night and plead their case and plead for you to keep their homes and their property values intact, and consider what message that sends to them, what message that will send to other residents within our city, and what message it sends to people that want to move home here about where the priority is, especially for people with children that want to raise their children here as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Allison Burley, 1969 Thorndale. So I'm not going to rehash everything we've said over the past 17 months. What I do want to remind you of is some of your campaign promises that you've said over the past few months that have been published in the local papers. The residents deserve a councilman who's responsive to them. I'd like to see vacant commercial space filled before new development is pursued. I want to work on redevelopment before compromising existing residential areas. And lastly, I want to make Stow a more desirable place to purchase a home and raise a family. Think about those. Those are what you said. That's what you ran on. Keep those promises and vote this down.
Gentleman in the back.
Eric Ronaldo, 3433 Margaret Avenue. Regarding the rezoning requests on Thorndale Avenue, a great number of points have been presented to this council by both my neighbors and me. We have been pleased to be able to meet with a number of council members over the last several months in order to expound upon the plight of our neighborhood. Council knows the issues, and I trust each of the council members has been able to personally deliberate and take to heart the assertions made by those of us who are against this rezoning request. I will concede, though, that if this issue is about money, then our neighborhood is doomed. After all, the juggernaut that is commercial investment and sales taxes will always overshadow investment in residential home ownership and private property taxes. I hope, however, that it is not all about money. The argument has been made that the financial investment within the city cannot be overlooked. And while the monies involved are significant, I will ask, what cost do you put on being able to live where you live? In a larger sense, what will this council be saying to the rest of this city's residents about their community sovereignty in rendering this decision? $5 million would buy a lot of homes, certainly my entire block and more. What is a resident to do when the allure of commercial money to municipalities bullies its way into your neighborhood? As a resident, where is our defense? I would like to argue that the Darrow and Kent Road location as a whole is not suitable for this expansion, let alone Thorndale Avenue. For the type of businesses and the caliber or volume of operations that are being suggested, this area simply is not appropriate or compatible for this manner of development. Mr. Marhofer's business has done very well, and I'm glad that he is in a position to make such an investment. But Thorndale Avenue, my neighborhood, is not the right place for this expansion. You're not being asked to allow the raising of blighted structures or the clearing of an unused field. You're being asked to forever alter the residential and natural landscape of this area, setting a commercial rezoning precedent that is both unwise and civically reprehensible. This council is the last line of defense from what is nothing short of the destruction of our neighborhood. Please vote against this and any rezoning request on Thorndale Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Mike Kosmak, 3545 Williamson Road. Here, I can hand these out, please.
I can pass them out. They're different from anything that you said before.
As our society and family structure changes, we find more and more that it doesn't, in fact, take a village. Today's villages are our neighborhoods. That's why you're seeing such strong support against this. This group of people has lived in tranquility in a peaceful neighborhood for decades and have demonstrated they're about this area. I presented alternative layouts to the Marhofer property. The current plan has room for 323 vehicles. My intention all along was to motivate Mr. Marhofer's architect to create a layout that doesn't include properties on Thorndale. I'm sure with his expertise, he could fit even more vehicles. This issue needs to be worked out on paper, not by passing this measure and then finding out what's next. Over these past several weeks, I've heard members of the Planning Commission, the former mayor, and others tell the people of Thorndale don't worry, it'll be fine. None of these people live on Thorndale. During the economic turmoil, Mr. Marhofer survived and was able to stay in business while other car dealerships were struggling. And how was he paid back? GM borrowed money from all of us and told Mr. Marhofer he would be out of business. With hard work, determination, and the support of the city, he got his dealership back. I think this is a great business story. Mr. Marhofer, you have showed you're a successful businessman. People in this room want you to build your new dealership, and we believe you can thrive and flourish without the Thorndale properties. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, my name is Doug Burley. I live at 1969 Thorndale Avenue. The other day, I was looking over the news coverage on this issue, and I wanted to share with you all something that I read that stuck in my head. On the Stow Century's Facebook page, a resident who was actually making a comment in support of this change stated that the residents of Thorndale should have known that the dealership was there before they bought their homes. As they always say, buyer beware. And I want you to think about that for a second. Because if you vote yes on this issue, that's what you're saying to everyone who owns a home and everyone who's looking at buying a home in the city of Stow. Buyer beware. If you vote yes, you're telling them that even though it's been shown countless times that almost every single provision of the comprehensive plan opposes this type of rezoning, that it doesn't matter. You're telling them, if by saying yes, that even when a member of this council asked the planning director to specifically articulate the necessity and benefit to the public of this rezoning request, and all he could do was repeat one sentence out of context of the comprehensive plan over and over, that doesn't matter. If you vote yes, you're telling them that even though we have a zoning code designed to protect the neighborhoods from being invaded by businesses, and until it was amended for the benefit of a single business, specifically disallowed this proposed type of usage in a community retail zone, that it doesn't matter. Buyer beware. If that's the message you want to send to people who are considering putting their hard-earned money down to invest in a home in Stow, then vote yes on this issue. However, if you want to send the message that owning a home in Stow is a good investment and one that you will do what you were elected to do and honor and respect the codes and policies that are in place to protect those investments, you have to vote no. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Marhofer, on any time or your turn?
Good evening. My name is John Slater. My address is 1375 East 9th Street, Cleveland, Ohio. And on behalf of myself and my client, Mr. Ron Marhofer, I want to thank the city for its thoughtful consideration of this very challenging issue. There can be no disagreement that this is an important issue. It's important to the neighbors who have concerns about the impact of this project of the rezoning on their neighborhood. There's no question about that. It's important to my client, who wants to ensure the viability of his business for his family and his employees. I know it's important to the city. Wants to make sure that the city decides for what's in the best interest of the city. Not for my client, not for the Thorndale neighborhood, but the city. We're not coming in here to bully this redevelopment or rezoning. We're not in here to do the cheapest thing. I mean, I think clearly everybody knows that what we've been through for 18 months has not been cheap at all. And the attempts, the plans A, B, C, D, and probably through Z, where we've been trying to work on potential proposals for this is something that we've all worked hard on, both sides have. And I think there needs to be recognition of that and the hard work on both sides for this. But sooner or later, a decision needs to be made. This is not inconsistent with your comprehensive plan. If you go through your comprehensive plan, you've heard expert testimony about it, we've talked about it. Your own planning commission, planning director, who are charged with responsibility of making sure that these types of things are consistent with the comprehensive plan, recommend approval. It doesn't mean it makes this not difficult. It's still a difficult decision. That's the reality of it.
There can be no legitimate dispute that the rezoning of this property would be in the city's best interest. The rezoning will drastically improve the appearance of the Darrow Kent Road intersection. It allows for the upgrade of my client's facilities to create a better, more attractive and safer environment for its customers and employees. It allows for the closing of Yukon Road, which is much safer for all parties involved. It will eliminate the expense and maintenance of that for the city. It will also benefit the city of Stow by substantially increasing tax revenue. One of the points in your comprehensive plan is to ensure viability of businesses. Especially, this is not a business coming to the city of Stow. It's been one that's been here. It's existed. The neighbors have come around this business, and I think that's very important because when people talk about this is going to impact my home, it's going to impact the value. The reality is there have been residents that have moved in and moved out directly across the street from this facility for years. This neighborhood grew up around this dealership. And in reality, that tells you that there is compatibility with this type of use in the facility. It's not a manufacturing facility, it's not something else. In reality, it is compatible with the neighborhood. It's been part of it. We will work to protect the neighborhood. We've talked about it. We've talked about making sure that, and this is site plan process, but there won't be any outdoor speakers. We already oriented the development so that only parking and storage would occur on the back lot areas. We agreed that we'll have low-level parking lot lighting shields to prevent lighting onto adjoining neighborhood properties. In conversations with council for the neighbors, you know, they wanted to, before the last meeting, they called us up about what we consider possibly reorienting the site, putting in a mound first along the back of the property, then along Thorndale. And we worked feverishly over the weekend and did that. I mean, we redid the whole plan. It would be at a significant expense, but we agreed that we would do that. And we will still commit to you that we will do that. So we worked to try to resolve some of those issues and some of those concerns. So the fence is gone. We'll put in that mounted buffering, both on Thorndale and on the back of the property. We'll agree no delivery trucks on Thorndale. That was something they asked me about. We'll provide our customers instruction about where they go on the street. Sure. And again, I'm one person speaking for Mr. Marhoff, who's here with his whole family. So I would ask for a little latitude.
You're almost 5 minutes.
Sure. In summary, these improvements will have negligible impact, if any. In fact, we think will benefit the area. They'll drastically improve the appearance and safety of the facility for our customers and for our employees. They'll provide many of the residents of the city the benefit of a needed improvement and permit long-term viability of our dealership in Stow by permitting us to remain competitive, which is key. However, we have another new...
I'm sorry, we all respect the 3-minute rule here. If he wants to have other people stand up and take their time, they should, but this is very disrespectful. We respect the 3-minute rule.
I would like to come in here, if I could.
I'll give you another minute.
Sure. If the city passes this rezoning, my client will commit and will diligently pursue an alternative development plan which would call for closing of Thorndale and constructing a cul-de-sac there. Where did that come from? The neighbors wanted to see that. We will do it if we can reasonably obtain required city approvals, rezoning of 3411 Yukon to C3 commercial, and develop a site plan that meets our business needs. We have already, by the way, obtained an option on 3411 Yukon and have developed a preliminary site plan. So what we're saying is we'll still commit to try to do that and accomplish it. May not be feasible, but my client is committed to work diligently to try to do that. In conclusion, we've committed to work with the city on this matter. We recognize it's this emotional issue, however, it requires the courage to do what's right for the city, not for my client or the neighbors, the city. And that is the grant of rezoning. Thank you.
So I assume that's everybody that wants to talk on this issue. Is there any other issue anybody wants to talk and address council? give you the same 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Gordon. I would ask the clerk of council to distribute Exhibit A. Exhibit A is a compilation of the comprehensive plan, the site map or the plot map for Grid 16, and pertinent provisions of the Stow zoning code. Most of this you have had before, but I want the record to reflect that every council member had in front of them the comprehensive plan, the map, the zoning map of the city of Stow, the executive summary of the city of Stow's, and also had pertinent provisions of the zoning code in front of them. Why? Because we're making this way too complicated. This is an easy vote.
You'll have to stay by the microphone.
This is an easy vote. Why is it an easy vote? Because you don't have to agonize in the Garden of Gethsemane. You don't have to sweat blood over this because the law governs. The comprehensive plan is explicitly adopted as the recommended basic planning guidance for you. It's in the law. It's an easy decision. Read the comprehensive plan. Mr. Loudermilk asked weeks ago, what does the comprehensive plan say about the balance between residential usage and commercial usage? What does it tell us we must do when we are confronted with this seemingly difficult conflict? It's clear. Read your planning document. Expand business, yes. At the price of neighborhoods, never. Now, why should you be concerned about that? Because the city of Stow, you as a council, do not make decisions based on whim or caprice. You do not make arbitrary and capricious decisions. You make decisions based on the law. Now, are you allowed to amend the law? Absolutely. What is the standard for amending the law? Which is what they're asking you to do, which they asked you to do in the text amendments, which we warned you that this vote was coming. You have to amend the law based on your finding that there is public necessity for this. Public necessity. That's the grounds on which you can change the law. Is there public necessity? There's not even private necessity. Why do we know that? Because there's no GM requirement that he have a certain number of cars on the lot. Nobody's threatening to take away his dealership if he has less than the number of cars in the lot that he wants to have. There's no requirement that all those cars be on that property. If there was, certainly, Mr. Malhofer would have come to you and come to the residents of Thorndale and say, look, I'm in a tough place here. I've got to do this. Help me. But that's not what happened. For 18 months, and including the participation of certain council members, we have tried to facilitate a resolution of this matter. And every time we have been told, this does not work for my business. And now, tonight, on the eve of the vote, you are being told, we are going to make every effort to come up with an alternate plan B. After 18 months, after we have met privately and publicly and under the auspices of City Council to try to reach a resolution, Now is the time? And what backing does that assurance have? We were told at a negotiating session sponsored by 2 council members that I'm going to try to work out that cul-de-sac deal. And it never happened. In fact, in a meeting with Mr. Prybonic, we were told it doesn't work. We have to ask the question Mr. Ryland asked himself when I talked to him the other day. His question to me was, what about my neighbors? Who's taking care of them? What about my community? You know, Chevrolet had an anthem or a slogan for years that said, "Heartbeat of America." Stand up. Stand up. All of you. This is the heartbeat of Stow. This is what community, this is what a unity, this is what civic pride is about. This is the heartbeat. And they support Mr. Malhofer. All they ask, and all they ask of you, is for God's sake, respect them. There is commercial property available. It was available. A vet now owns it. And it sat there for 760 days on the market when I discussed it in January of 2013. It was already on the market for 2 years.
Please wrap it up, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, sir. You all can sit down, I'm sorry. This is about you. What does it mean to you to be a council member of this city? Who do you owe responsibility to? If you say no, which you should, you know you should. If you say no, you are simply saying to Mr. Malhofer, do this the right way. Not go away, not shut your business down, but do this the right way. As one lady said here, thank you.
Moving into the committee reports. Ms. Bednar.
I guess, planning committee did meet this week. Monday night chambers, we discussed 3 items, and actually planning has 4 items on the agenda for this evening. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Bednar? Mr. Bond.
Improvements did meet this evening. We have 2 business items, and we also have an item under new business. We have to answer all.
Any questions for Mr. Provine? Mr. Razor.
Thank you, Mr. President. No Roads and Safety Committee meeting this week. We have one legislative item. I asked that we hold it. I was just informed that House Bill 5, which is aimed at streamlining municipal income tax, has gone to the Ohio Senate Finance Committee. I think it would be prudent for us to wait and see what's in that bill.
Any questions for Mr. Razor? Mr. Razor, do you have anything?
Yes, we did, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met earlier this evening. We passed 5 motions out of that committee, and we also have 8 items in legislative form tonight. I have to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Reardon? We do the whole met on Monday. We got a number of items discussed. One item will be under new business this evening, and we discussed some of the motions in the finance committee. We have to answer any other questions. Seeing none, mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. 2013 draws to a close in the next coming weeks, and it has been quite a year in the city of Stow. As we close out 2013 and look to 2014, it struck me that we find ourselves at a crossroads tonight, both literally and figuratively, with some opportunities before us about how the city will look in the future. And certainly City Council is essential to that process, and I want to thank all of you for your commitment and dedication to that. I hope it is not lost on any of you that there is an opportunity this evening, and you have all expressed support and been very positive about the opportunity at the Stow Kent Shopping Center. We have a site plan before us tonight that promises to truly be transformational in the area of our community that I think everyone in this room and everyone within the borders of our city would agree is in desperate need of a change, a transformation, and a fresh look. I want to thank again publicly Rob Rissman and Stuart Graves for their work with Mr. Kurtz and other members of the city administration and myself over the past 16 months to develop a site plan that truly reflects the vision that both the administration and city council and the community at large has expressed is important to them for that area of town. On another note, I want to thank Mrs. Bednar for her service. It has been a pleasure to serve with you over the course of many years, and I know I will continue to see you frequently. I wish you the best in the future. And finally, it would be remiss of me to not wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I know I will not see you in an official capacity until after the holiday, so I wish you all the best and a time to spend with your families and enjoy the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the mayor? Mr. Barron?
Well, I have no report tonight, Mr. Patson, a little bit. If there's any questions, I'm prepared to answer.
Any questions, Mr. Barron? Mr. Earl, do you have another report?
No, sir, I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Earl? Mr. Reale?
Thank you. No report, but I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Any questions for Mr. Reale? Mr. Renton?
Thank you, Mr. Costello. The leaf season that would not ended today finally at 2 o'clock. We will be doing some pile jumping for some that were covered up by snow that we couldn't see. So we should have that complete by 2 o'clock tomorrow, just in time to change over to the snow fighting equipment, the 4 to 6 inches we're expecting this weekend. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Brown, I hope the forecast is out of whack.
Me too.
Call it the cold temperature.
As a teacher, I would like to request that you push the snow off to like Monday so we can get a snow day.
I'll take it anytime, I'll straight time.